Hello. Okay. A 26. The auction slows at 22.25. A little noise, down tick, kind of nonsensical. A bid, 2 ticks from buyers. A slow uptick, another slow uptick, which is inconclusive. A tick lower, another tick lower. Seller steps in at 22.25. And then some more down ticks. All right, so there's a little buying and then more selling. And then we just float. Offers pulled, 827. Some more uptaking at 21.25. No offers were pulled. This was a seller-driven move from 20 to 1975 down into the LBM. Then we crossed down into 796, 1850. Is that there's a wall stack up there? No, it's already there. And then they pull. So somebody loads bids and then it slips 4 ticks. I didn't even notice that. This is a lure. So somebody's reloading here and holding these 200 contracts, and sellers are seeking liquidity in the market, so they're pushing down, trying to hit that order. He gets filled for however many ticks, and then he pulls to 200, and the selling pressure kicks in and slips us down to 17.25. Offer pulled, price shot lower. Okay, so I made a note of it. That was a spoof. Price still in LVN, forming balance at 1850. That's fair, bearish. We see another puke lower. Price gets a bit schizophrenic, and then we see a bidder step in here at 1850. A strong buying from 1875 to 25 up to 2075, and then a step in from. I want to see if this is seller driven or it's orders being pulled. It looks like it's orders being pulled, so buyers don't want to trade here. We go down to 20s and then 1975. Um, and then sellers pull by the looks of it. Yeah. So nobody wants buyers and sellers, I guess, don't want to trade in 1975 to 21. They would rather trade the value area. And then sellers actually step in here. There's less pulling and more trading. Rally to 2175. This wasn't a rally. It wasn't a rally. It wasn't driven by buyers and sellers. It was driven by illiquidity, the unwillingness to trade at this thin spot, 1975 to 2075. And then the bid up on low volume, or I'm misreading the pre-market volume, and this is being driven up just by ones and threes and fours, which is obviously possible. Because yesterday, I thought the same thing that people were pulling, more people pulling the pre-market. It could just be lower volume from the pre-market session. We go down to 2150 and then we auction lower and we're balancing between this high volume node 20 and 2150. And then we get above 21 and I think acceptance and a run to VPOC because we're in the HVN now, out of the LVN. Misread break of VA from 2175. Let's see that. Initiative selling at 2150 to 1875. So I had it wrong. And then the jump from buyers, the walk down from sellers, a little bit of back ticking at 21.25, but the buyer is still there. Price hits the lows at 20. Nobody wants to trade there, and then we tick lower, so somebody doesn't want to trade there, and then the buyer steps in, or the offers pull. It looks like the offers pull. I'm not saying that's what happened. That's just what it looks like. And then there's some real buying there on lower volume, a 6, a 9. Then we form an auction 10, 15 at 21.75. So some back ticking from sellers now. The auction stops there. Nobody wants to trade there. So I would say, we come up here, nobody wants to trade there. That means we're going lower, but we overtick it. Um, I want to see if they find supply, and it looks like they do up there. But then a seller steps in at 21, at 22, 25, and 22 even, bids it lower, and then the buyer steps in. So we know that people want to facilitate a strong opinionated auction between 23 and 22. And I think we're going to VPOC now, just from AMT auction market theory, because we cleared 21.75 and we have a 26.50 up there. That's VPOC. I just think it's going to cross the balance area, but it gets sticky here. Sellers step in at 22.50, then we drift higher, then we drift lower. Now we're balancing on the VA, which is like 21. It can be 21.75 or 21, which is stupid. And I'm confused now because all price has done is just played this range, which is the edge of a value area. So I'm thrown off. Sellers stepped in again, bears 21 even. Sellers stepped in on bullish. And then we tick lower, 1, 2, 3 on low volume. Then the offers are pulled again. So that same thin spot, there's no auction here. They just don't want to trade 20s to 1975, 21s to 1975. Then there's an auction from sellers of 15 and 8 and a 3 on the inside print, and a 14 and 8 and a 7 from the buyer. So now we want to facilitate prices lower. So there was indecision. There wasn't indecision. There was inaction from both sides of the market at this LVN 2075 to 20, and then they decided they wanted to trade it, and that's what sent us lower. Market stops here again. A little bit of upticking, so we're forming an auction. Somebody pulled the order. They were probably going for that, for liquidity down there. For whatever reason, they pulled the order. The market, I think, was pricing it in, so I think it's going to rally a bit off of that being pulled, and I was wrong. We immediately shot lower down to 1850s, which is a value area from this thin spot. I wanted this level to work because it was a high volume node. Um, so we form an auction there, right? We're forming an auction above the area, and then the, both, I think, the combination of pulling from sellers and the two huge orders here, a 13 and a 14, and then another 13 at 21s, is what sent us back to the low, value area low. And then some sustained selling back to 1975, but the buyer is still there, and so are the sellers. So this is just a problematic area, it appears to be, for me anyways. Whatever, I'll figure it out. It shouldn't be much of a problem in the future. Then we have a lot of inside prints here. I'm bearish 21 even, so I'm sitting on my hands here. Market stops 21.75 and walks lower. And then buyers finally step in. 20.75, 20 even. Some back ticking, a walk lower. Uh, we're forming an auction down there and the sellers are in control, I'd expect price to go lower because of the 213s at 1925. The slow upticking from buyers I don't really care about. Now I do because a buyer stepped in at 1975 to 2025, 1319, and whatever that other offer was, whatever that other ask was. Buy, I mean. We're back at 21s. So I'm like the entire range for this morning has been 1850 to 2175. I think we were just filling out this thin spot of the profile. That's what the play was to form a distribution here. That's what it appears to be. Watching 8 to 1580s, 1850s, which is the notch. Downside, wrote sellers are in control. So I interpreted this as a rejection of the value area low, and I want I want to see price go lower than that. Um, and I want to see 1850 flip to the downside. We're still forming an auction below 1850s, looking for 15s. And then 1675 and 17 holds. I want to see what that auction looks like. So we get to the LVM, and then big initiative from buyers there. We pay a couple ticks in slippage, a walk lower after the initiative from buyers. The filling of an order, large order 139 for 147, traded after the slow walk. So buyers are in control and they shoot it higher. And there's sell pressure there compared to the tape over here. There's like nothing 30, 10, 27, 10. So it's heated. There's more volume down here. And buyers are still in control. We have indecision here. If that buyer shows up again, because there's less volume here, price is going to shoot up because nobody wants to trade here right now. But if that buyer wants to trade there, he's not going to have any resistance. 1830s, they're forming a bit of an option now. There's some absorption at 1750. A tick down to 25s, a slow tick down. Nobody wants to trade it compared to this value area. Buyer steps in 1950, they form a bit of an auction. Tape stops again and the buyer steps in. It's 1725, and then I want to see if they pull, but presumably the buyer shows up again. Yeah, 47, 13, 7, 27, and then just 9, 6, 8, 5. So he outpaces them. And we close above 18 and 50. The buyer shows up again on the inside prints there. That three tick burst. There's a they're forming an auction there. So now price on both sides wants to go higher with a bullish bias because because the active buyer is outperforming the seller and the price is even. There's a 15, an 18, a 15, and a 21, which means the auction's up. We jump again, but on lower buy side momentum. We tick lower. So it looks like he's gone. We drift back down after he pushes it to whatever, 1850. No strength from buyers at 1775. Let's see what I was talking about. So I wrote that and I was behind the tape. Didn't realize he left. Forming an auction, which is good. It's bullish. 18 up to 1850. Okay. And then another auction at 1950. Upticking from buyers. I'm bullish. Off of the lows. Continued buying. And a little back and forth. It looks like the buyer is gone in the same area, the LBM again. I think they walk it down to 1950. There's pushing the VPOC, Bollinger trade missed. 846. And that looks like it. 2125. Okay, so the bid jumps. 131 is thrown there, and I think these orders shoot up because the 131 is there. So I'm looking for 4 or 5 ticks from there. There's 2 ticks, 3 ticks. Okay, so I was wrong. And then he pulls the order. So I didn't miss it. It just wasn't there. The large order that flickered in. Um, let's watch the climb to the VPOC and then we'll be done. Okay, so moving on low volume, 22 and 11. I'm just watching the ask, and then an auction there at 23.25, up on low volume, and then a buyer steps in at 24, 23.75. Low volume again, another buyer steps in at 25 and 24.75. They're forming an auction, so now we're going to VPOC, assuming the previous bias, and then somebody absorbed 40 at 24.50. 40 sell orders, more auction, some pressure from sellers now. And then they match an auction there. There isn't a buyer to replace the sell pressure here yet. Let's go back. There's sell pressure down here. There's no buyer that absorbs the sell pressure. They just form an auction there. So the seller comes in at 25 and 24.75, and then he just leaves. It's not that there was an outpacing of buyers from sellers. And then we jump. We form an auction, and then the buyer kicks in and pushes us to VPOC, and he throws 33. He wouldn't be able to trade off of it. It's too fast. He throws 33 at 26, which is even more bullish. And then we're VPOC like that. We traverse. Let's watch the reversal. Okay, we have strong buying. The auction dries up, a 3 and an 8, a down tick lower, and the shifting of a 22, a 20 and a 22, and we move lower on a 20 and a 22, assuming that's just not the stacking on inside prints. I could be wrong. Then an 11, so the auction shifts a tick lower. That's nothing major. The buyer's still there. You threw a 14, a 16. The auction is now shifting lower, 16 to 25 and an 11. And so they just naturally walk it lower from sell pressure with the lower shifting auction. So buyers and sellers weren't willing to pay these prices. They shifted the auction here and there. And the buyers that were there were now caught offside from the auction going lower and the sell pressure. And we presumably, because we're back in the value area, we shoot down the 25s here. Uptick. The auction shifts. More upticks from buyers. And then it dries up here. There's nothing left. And there's no more auction here. We facilitated all the trade we needed. The auction shifts lower, and then we shift 2 points, form another auction. So this looks like the move being passively driven by limit orders. And then we trade at VPOC. We don't even make it down to 25. Price shoots up again. And then it shoots up again. which is bullish, and that's where the tape ends.